sexual healing. So as I mentioned earlier, if you don't want the little ones to hear, get them out of the room. Probably the most vulnerable you will ever be is when you're naked. There's nowhere to hide. And the naked truth always comes out in the bedroom and can either bring a couple closer together or push them further apart. Please welcome certified sex therapist Emily Diala to join us in this conversation. When you say you're a sex therapist, so many people think it's about how to perform the act.
Yes, and honestly, very little of what I do is what people think of when they think of sex therapy. I mean, so much of it is about addressing the underlying issues and causes that may be contributing to the problem. So I may have, 5 different people come in with low sexual desire, and there may be 15 different reasons why they're there in my office. So it's about getting under the table.
There's a lot of stereotypes, too. Before we get to some of those, I just want to touch on this, is that when we say we're talking about sex, I've grown up around the world, and in other countries are just like, yeah, what do you want to know? Yeah, okay, right. But
like it's no big deal.
Still in America, we're kind of like, ah. Is that part of our problem?
It is part of our problem. Unfortunately, as a society, we're kind of inhibited when it comes to our sexuality, and that causes a lot of problems. There's a lot of repression. And I think that when people get married, there's kind of an automatic assumption that, okay, now we're married, we're going to have great sex, and we're going to have intimacy. But the fact is that that doesn't always happen. And I think because we're inhibited as a culture, we've gotten very skilled at compartmentalizing sex for sex sake and intimacy, when the reality is most people at the end of the day want a combination of both, but that can be hard to find.
Sometimes I think you give sex, you're like, okay, I'm doing this for you. Sometimes you take sex, I'm doing this for me.
Right.
And sometimes you share it. You're both in the same plane, if you will.
Which is ideal.
Yeah. All right. There's another, that stereotype that women want romance and intimacy, men just want sex.
There is that stereotype, and the fact is it's not true. I mean, I see plenty of guys in my office that have lower desire than women, so there's just kind of a cultural myth about that. But I want to talk a little bit about today is how to get both at the same time, because that is possible.
All right, how do we do that?
How do we do that?
Because a lot of us, I'm black, so you can't see me blushing, but I'm blushing right now. Big old blush going on right here. But anyway, there's, without feeling embarrassed to do that.
So the last time Dr. Young and I were on together, we used this definition of intimacy as into-me-see. And it's really about feeling safe and secure enough in who you are to be able to share that part of yourself with another person. And just like you opened up with, we're most vulnerable when we're naked with our partner in the bedroom. And so if you're secure enough in who you are and connect with another person who is in that same place, you can have, extremely passionate sex and lovemaking, and it can be even spiritual in that context.
Yeah, because if you're angry, though, it shows up. If you're upset with, it shows up. If you're disappointed with, it shows up. We kind of communicate without communicating that way.
Exactly. Those emotional blocks can definitely inhibit passion.
Yeah. Okay, so why do so many of us still feel like we're missing something?
I think it's for those reasons, because we kind of have these assumptions that, okay, we're married, so we'll have, a healthy sex life, and we'll have romance, and we'll have intimacy, but because of this compartmentalization that occurs, it gets blocked off, and because of the, inhibitions we have as a society, that also inhibits things.
Yeah, and it's like when you read those romance novels, it's like, well, now, Christian Grey did it like this, honey.
Right.
Okay, so you need to, he's like, I don't know who that is, right? But no, do we also sometimes fall into this stereotype that everybody else out there is knowing how to do it right, and it's like the Hollywood script, and it's just reality is it's just not that.
It's just not that way. I saw an excellent little short video the other day about sex as a jam session. If you think of musicians coming together to jam together with their instruments, they don't come in with a script ready to go necessarily, but they kind of play off each other. And so if you think of sex as that way, you can it's exciting to get to know your partner. And I always tell people that sex is like a fingerprint. Your individual sexuality is going to be different from somebody else's, and the sex that you share with one person is going to be different from, somebody else. And so it's important to keep those things in mind.
The other thing that makes it complicated, I guess, is that if you take a look at the animal kingdom, you know what sex is for. It is, we need to make some more animals. We need more birds, people. We need more of this, and the bees are busy, and everybody's going, okay, it's springtime, right? And, and so at its very base, that's what it's for, to procreate.
Right.
But being humans, we add a conscience to it. We add a whole other level to it.
Right.
And that's where it can kind of get, because that's not the, I guess, necessarily the natural part of sex. It is something that we've evolved into.
We have evolved into it, and it's one of the most wonderful things about what makes us human is our capacity to connect with another person in that way. But sometimes there's this assumption that comes into play, sticking with the vulnerability theme, that if this person really knows me, they're not going to love me,
Yeah.
or they're not going to accept me,
Yeah.
or I can't really share myself with them. And so we just shut off emotionally. And so those fears, or those feelings you mentioned, like anger, shame, those can become tangible and really block the connection that you could be capable of having with your partner.
Yeah, and then I'm going to ask you a question that probably is a bigger conversation later, but equating sex with love, and we've seen that get a lot of people in trouble.
Yes, we have, because a lot of people, sex becomes a commodity, or if I have sex with him, then he'll love me, and then he'll stay with me, and
or if I buy her dinner, surely she'll go home. It's like, no.
And it becomes kind of a,
you know what I'm talking about. We've had that. It's like, but I bought you dinner. I'll give you the money back.
Right. Exactly. And I took you to a nice restaurant, but it's not a tit for tat. And when it becomes like that, when it's an exchange in that way, that kills desire.
Yeah,
it's not honest, and it's not that spiritual connection that you could potentially have.
All right. In a minute, we're going to have Emily and Dr. Young answer any questions you may have about relationships. We'll put that phone number up there. It is right there on the screen. And the way this goes is that if it's an embarrassing question for you and you're in the audience, just simply say, "A friend of mine." Because that shows what a kind person you are. Okay, so let's start with this first question for you specifically, though, Emily, and this is Erin. Hi, Erin. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great.
Okay, so what's your question?
So I'm listening to your conversation about intimacy and sex and connecting with your partner, and I have a friend who... when she's with her partner, she says that the sex feels really intimate, she feels really connected with her guy, and then kind of as soon as it's over, he's more interested in watching crappy reality TV shows than even acknowledging that she's still in the same room with him. And she feels disconnected, really confused. What's that about?
So that can definitely happen. I mean, people can enjoy this kind of romantic, passionate experience of making love, and then suddenly it's like a wall goes off, and there they are with watching the crappy reality TV again. And, you know, I think that is about the person's inability to really sustain intimacy. And I think that they get a little taste of what it's like to be vulnerable and intimate and to share themselves with another person, but that at the same moment becomes ultimately terrifying to them. You know, they may feel engulfed emotionally in a way, or suffocated in a way.
Because then you have to use your words a little bit too. I mean, then you're like talking and you're looking at each other as opposed to eyes closed and going, okay.
Right.
Because sometimes you can have two people in that bed, but they're in their own world.
Exactly.
You know, doing their own thing.
So definitely that can happen. Like, it's sticking with that feeling of enmeshment. I think people feel, like I was saying, if you know, can kind of put that wall down and open yourself up. There's sometimes a fear that they're not going to love me for who I am, but there's also, on the other side of the spectrum, a fear that I'm going to lose who I am with this person. And that can be equally terrifying. And so it's about, again, being secure enough in who you are. It's about the ability to maintain a strong sense of autonomy while at the same time maintaining connection with another person.
So instead of watching those TV shows, tell them to watch Great Day. If you'd like more information on Emily's relationship tips, you can just log on to our site at greatdayhouston.com. Well, if you have that relationship question for Emily or Dr. Devon Young, call us now at 713-284-1055, 713-284-1055. They're answering your questions next, or the questions that your friends would be asking.